Karan couldn't remember how many times he'd watched Nina die. In his dreams, in the pages of his own stories, it always ended the same way. Yet every morning, Karan would peek through his binoculars into the neighboring lawn and spy Nina going through her yoga routine, very much alive. Karan remembered everything about Nina. To be fair, he remembered everything about everything. He had a photographic memory. But Nina was different. He could practically feel the breeze that had blown the morning he'd first met her, whipping Nina's long dark hair about her face, the curves of her hips and waist, her smooth laughter, her effortless manner. Karan felt haunted by his love for Nina, like a movie running in his head forever and ever. He often wondered if his recurring dreams or the morbid tales he wrote of Nina's death were a pathological attempt to avoid the fact that she would never love him back. After all, Professor Laksh Singh, her husband, was a man of staggering quality. Tall, fair, built like a brick shithouse, with a gigantic cock that Karan had once had the misfortune of glimpsing at the local gym, Laksh Singh was a man's man. By comparison, Karan looked like a misshapen, deflated football. Laksh also appeared on the front covers of science magazines. His work was lauded as the most significant biological research since Darwin. Some even considered Laksh a true alchemist with the power of the Philosopher's Stone at his command. As outclassed as he felt, Karan was grateful to have such extraordinary friends. Despite his gratitude, Karan couldn't stop writing grisly stories where women analogous to Nina were murdered in a series of increasingly horrifying ways by a man that resembled Laksh. He could be crafting a wacky children's fantasy novella set on another planet, yet somehow Nina would worm her way onto the page, only to die in some tragic fashion. It had begun to disconcert Karan to the point where he had stopped writing for a while, but the scenes had found purchase in his dreams, waking him in a cold sweat. He had been forced to begin writing the miserable stories again, if only to drain his subconscious of the horror. His eyes flashed, wrote Karan mechanically, late one evening. Lalit swung his fist at Naina with enough force to unhinge her jawbone. Wiping a droplet of salty sweat from his eyes, Karan looked up from his desk and glimpsed Nina and Laksh in the living room of their vast farmhouse. They seemed to be arguing about something. Frowning, Karan retrieved his binoculars and squinted through them into the couple's dimly lit living room. He nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw Nina grab a flower vase from a nearby countertop and hurl it at Laksh. Laksh ducked out of the way, unfazed. The giant man then strutted up to Nina and backhanded her across the face. Nina's jaw shifted violently sideways, dislocated. Karan felt a cold chill run down his spine. He stared, dumbfounded, at the lines he had just written on his computer. He then glanced up through the binoculars again. Nina cowered on the floor, crying. Laksh towered over her, showing no sign of remorse or concern. The world took on a surreal appearance, like everything was suddenly illuminated by stage lights. Karan knew he should act, call the police, an ambulance, something. But fear kept him in his seat more surely than shackles. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Karan noted a curious sensation of déjà vu. Then, like a man possessed, Karan's fingers raced over the keyboard once more. Lalit gripped Naina by the throat and yanked her several inches off the floor, wrote Karan, licking his lips. Karan looked up from his keyboard just in time to spot Laksh lifting Nina off the floor and smacking her in the face. Karan felt as though someone had pumped hot acid through his veins, the hairs on his arms rising like tent poles. Finally breaking free of his reverie, Karan scrambled out of his seat and rushed to the door. He shuffled across his lawn as fast as his wretched heart would allow. He clambered over the low fence separating his property from Nina and Laksh's, then sprinted the final distance to their front door. He stopped dead in his tracks. Through the broad living room window, Karan saw Nina lying on the floor, blood pooling around her in a haphazard crimson ellipse. She wasn't moving. Laksh stood mere feet from her, wiping the gore from his hands with a white satin napkin, his expression impassive. The scene burned into Karan's perfect memory like a tattoo. A roaring filled his ears, and Karan vomited a copious volume of chicken nuggets and diet cola all over the lawn. On shaky legs, Karan stepped up to the living room window and placed a sweaty palm on the cool surface of the glass. Spotting movement out of the corner of his eye, Karan glanced up to find Laksh staring back at him from the other side of the glass. Laksh's face broke into a broad grin, his eyes glittering with satisfaction. Karan turned and ran. Time warped around him. One moment he was in his lawn, the next he found himself barricaded in his bedroom. Karan shivered and sweated, despite the warm summer air. He'd killed Nina. If he hadn't written those twisted stories, the sight of her drowning in gore flashed through his mind over and over again. The next thing he knew, the sun had risen, and his alarm was blaring out a monophonic rendition of Beethoven's Fifth. He rose slowly to his feet, dazed and thoroughly confused. Before his brain had an opportunity to recall the events of the previous evening, Karan glanced out of his window, an act of pure reflex. He spotted Nina going through her morning yoga routine. A familiar affection sparked within him before his eyes widened and the floor seemed to dematerialize beneath him. His mind raced through a million different explanations of the impossibility before him. Unable to get any further with mere thought, Karan stepped out of his house and approached Nina. When she noticed him, she smiled and waved, making Karan's heart leap. They exchanged a few words. He couldn't be sure, but Nina didn't seem like a hallucination. "Oh, hey Karan," said Laksh, stepping out onto the lawn with a jocular wink. Karan's asshole puckered up, his limbs turning statuesque. But again, nothing in the interaction with Laksh led Karan to believe anything was amiss. Hastily taking his leave of the couple, Karan retreated to his house and began Googling symptoms of psychosis and schizophrenia. Months passed, and the memory of Nina's death receded into the back of Karan's mind. He stopped writing stories and carefully avoided considering why. It worked well enough for a while. He would join Nina and Laksh for long drives through the countryside and barbecues under the stars. They would crack open beers and speak of Nina's passion for travel or Laksh's research into decoding epigenetic data or about Karan's writer's block. Never once did Karan bring up what he'd seen. He tried talking to a therapist once, but it became incredibly obvious the shrink didn't believe him. Hell, his own mother didn't believe him. One night, nearly 3 months later, there was a knock at Karan's door. He found Nina standing in the rain, her eyes puffy, her shoulders slumped. Karan hustled her into the house and handed her every towel he owned. It's lovely to have you over, Nina," ventured Karan, handing Nina a cup of hot tea. "But is everything all right?" "Laksh hit me," said Nina flatly. "What?" said Karan, a familiar chill running down his spine. "We got into an argument. I want to go back to university and get my doctorate in anthropology. But Laksh would rather I spent the rest of my life picking out new drapes and roasting chickens for his post-workout salads. I let it go most days, but I just cleared the JNU entrance exam, so I told him to go fuck himself. And he slapped me." "That's horrible," stammered Karan. "Is there anything I can do?" "Wouldn't have taken you for a white knight," said Nina, chuckling. "It's strange, Karan. It almost feels as though I should have seen this coming. I knew Laksh had a mean streak. He's never hit me before, but I always knew. What does that say about me? That I chose a man like him?" "It doesn't say anything about you," said Karan firmly. "If it happens again, leave." "Yeah, you're right. You can trust me, all right?" said Karan, placing his hand on Nina's shoulder in what he hoped would be a reassuring gesture. "If he touches you again, call me. I'll help you move out and find a place to stay. Whatever you need." "You're sweet," said Nina, her gaze like hypnotic bait. "If I ever get to start over, I hope I choose a guy like you instead." Karan felt a bulge forming in his pants and quickly pulled his hand back, blushing. When he looked again, Nina was still regarding him with earnest interest. "Anyway," croaked Karan, "maybe you could use a distraction. Do you play Tekken?" Several hours of button mashing later, when the sun began to set, Nina kissed Karan on the cheek before taking her leave. Standing in his doorway, his fingers tracing the moist spot where Nina had pecked him, Karan prayed he wasn't hallucinating again. A week later, Karan watched Laksh murder Nina a second time. Just as before, Karan felt paralyzed as he watched, unsure whether he was witnessing a premonition, madness, or alternate timelines. Again, Nina was up and about the following morning as if nothing had happened. What could Karan do but laugh with tears streaming down his face? 2 months later, it happened again. Karan was ready this time. Despite the ice running through his veins as he watched Laksh slide the knife between Nina's ribs, like a child with a pincushion, Karan had the wherewithal to produce his DSLR camera and record the scene. The zoom wasn't great and he didn't catch all of it, but it was enough. Once he had anonymously emailed the footage of the murder to the police, Karan went over to confront Laksh. He was hardly the mano a mano type, but he had to know what was going on. Swallowing a whimper, he rang the doorbell. When Laksh answered, Karan felt his knees going weak. "We need to talk," Karan said. Laksh peered into Karan's eyes with a frown, before a glimmer of recognition appeared in his eyes. "Ah yes," said Laksh, smiling. "I suppose we do. It's about time. Come in." Laksh offered Karan a seat in the living room. A pretty flower vase sat on the coffee table, filled with resplendent white lilies from Nina's garden. Nothing about the space suggested that it had been the scene of many a murder. "So, have you figured it out yet?" said Laksh, his eyes twinkling with menace. "Or are you here for answers?" Karan bit off the words in his mouth, for Laksh had already spoken them. "How?" muttered Karan. "How?" "How do I keep bringing her back?" said Laksh. "It's obvious, really. But that's not the real question, is it? The real question you're burning to ask is how you knew it was going to happen before it did. Tell me, did you have the dreams this time?" "This time?" croaked Karan. Laksh grinned. "This is my favorite bit. The look on your face is always priceless." Karan felt a sinking sensation. "We've done this before?" "In a manner of speaking," said Laksh. Karan scrambled for words, for sanity, for his breath. Cascades of deja vu racked his mind in a kaleidoscopic frenzy. I don't believe it," stammered Karan. "You never do. It's faster for me to just show you." Laksh grasped Karan's arm and yanked him to his feet, leading him down to the basement. The musty space was lit by a single hanging bulb that threw the basement into sharp relief. Laksh moved a few boxes out of the way to reveal a stainless steel hatch. He punched a code into the small security keypad in the middle of the hatch, and the hatch opened with a crisp pneumatic hiss, revealing a ladder that led down into a sub-level of the basement. Still stupefied, Karan grasped his way down the ladder in pitch darkness. When he hit the bottom of the ladder, white fluorescent lights buzzed on to reveal a large laboratory, about the same size as the basement above. Karan's eyes widened as he spotted a series of long glass tubes, several feet wide and doubly tall, lining the walls that flanked him. The tubes were filled with murky green fluid, within which floated perfectly formed human clones. The tubes to Karan's left housed doppelgangers of Nina. To the right, Karan found himself staring into 3 pristine renditions of his own face. The clones were naked, their eyes closed. Feeling a powerful surge of nausea, Karan turned away. "There you have it," said Laksh. "My pièce de résistance." "What number am I?" croaked Karan. 4, said Laksh. "You're actually quite durable, or dumb, depending on how you look at it. I've replaced Nina over 15 times. She figures it out quick. You, on the other hand, it usually takes you about 6 months to piece everything together. Then I start over." "Why?" said Karan. "Why do you do this?" "Because you deserve it," snarled Laksh. Laksh backhanded Karan across the mouth, sending Karan sprawling to the cold floor of the laboratory. "God, that feels good every time," yelled Laksh, a manic smile on his face. "I don't understand," said Karan. "Why would you kill me? Why would you kill Nina?" "She cheated on me," said Laksh, without batting an eye. 3 guesses who she cheated on me with." Karan felt a sliver of fear cut through the shock. "Nina slept with me?" "Bingo," said Laksh. "Of course, killing either of you would hardly have been convenient if you guys just disappeared. Couldn't have your family or friends sniffing around. Lucky for me, I'm the only man on the planet that can clone humans." "But our memories," stammered Karan. "How come Nina always remembers our time together?" "Wow, you're a little sharper this time," said Laksh. "You're right, mere cloning wouldn't replicate memories. Did you know that even a decade after war's end, children born in war zones show signs of PTSD? Or that the grandchildren of people that survive famines are more likely to be fat? What the hell does that have to do with anything? It means our bodies, our cells, our genes, they remember. They remember everything. My research allows me to tap directly into the memories trapped in every cell of your body. It's all there in the epigenetic data, like books in a lost language. All I need is a fresh DNA sample from the most recent clone, and I can reboot any memory into the fresh clone. I can be selective too. You remember what I want you to remember. Perfect replicas that have no idea I've already claimed their souls. Karan's head spun. Laksh stared at him, nothing in his handsome features aligning with the disturbing twinkle in his eyes. You're fucking crazy, said Karan. I wish I was, Karan, said Laksh. The truth is, it feels good to watch you and Nina die. It's a rush. It feels right. In that moment, all the shame, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they just melt away, and for a moment, I'm free. What happens now? Said Karan. You kill me? Oh, I've never killed you, Karan, said Laksh. What? You do me the pleasure of killing yourself, said Laksh. No matter how many times we go through this, it always ends the same. You realize that if you accept this, you have to accept that Nina, the Nina you love, is dead. And you can't do it. There's a way out though. If you just kill yourself, it could be like none of this ever happened. A version of you will get to see Nina again. A version that may never know the truth. Sometimes we even shake hands on it. Karan gathered himself up. Sorry, but it's not going to go that way again. I've already notified the police. They have a video of you murdering Nina. Laksh laughed. You really think you haven't tried that? The police probably have a stack of them by now. But no one believes you, said Laksh. By the time the cops show up, Nina is alive and well. No body, no crime, as they say. They'll figure it out. Sure, said Laksh, scoffing. Anyway, now that you understand, can we get to the good bit? Good bit? Laksh walked over to a set of monitors hooked up to a number of gently whirring CPUs that sat beside the tubes to the left. Laksh typed a series of commands into the computer as he spoke. The green fluid in the nearest glass tube suddenly began to drain away. When all the fluid was gone, the tube sank into the floor, releasing the clone from the glass chamber. The Nina clone crumbled to the floor of the basement unmoving. An interminable moment passed. The clone's eyes then snapped open. It gasped for air and stared around in consternation. What's happening? Said the Nina clone. Who are you people? Where am I? Here you go, said Laksh. This is Nina with the tabula rasa mod. She retains her linguistic and rational capacities, but her memory is like fresh, unmarked snow. She doesn't even know her own name. This is my gift to you, Karan. Take her. Do as you will. What? Said Karan and the Nina clone in unison. Sure, it's the least I can do, said Laksh, shrugging, considering you're about to kill yourself. Wait, I've done this before too? Oh yeah, said Laksh. Took you about 5 minutes to make your mind up the last time. Karan staggered, hot nausea surging up in his throat once more. No, said Laksh. No, you're not a piece of shit. Sorry to break it to you, but the many iterations of this scenario would suggest otherwise. Well, that wasn't me, said Karan desperately. I'm saying no. I'm not playing your sick fucking game. Suit yourself, said Laksh. Laksh stepped up to the Nina clone and punched her in the mouth. Nina staggered back, blood pouring from her mouth and nose. Laksh struck her once more, and Nina fell to the floor. He then began to stomp down on Nina's head until there was nothing left but bloody chunks of brain and bone. We're done here, said Laksh, breathing heavily, but otherwise unaffected. Now be a good boy and go hang yourself. Karan felt like he was drifting through a fog as he climbed out of the laboratory. He sauntered back to his house, tears welling up in his eyes. He locked the front door behind him, retreated to his bedroom and slipped under the blankets. Sleep came surprisingly quickly. He woke with a start nearly 3 hours later. It was dark outside. Karan found that while the shock of the revelation had hardly worn off, he felt a strange sense of clarity. After a lifetime of indecision and rumination, Karan finally knew exactly what he had to do. He walked down to his storage closet, recovered all the wires and extension cords he could find, and set about constructing a noose. When the sun rose the next morning, Laksh arrived in Karan's room to find the latter hanging from his bedroom ceiling fan. Karan's face was swollen like a piece of cake someone had mushed between their fingers. Smirking, Laksh set about disposing of the body. Moving with a smooth efficiency, Laksh hacked off chunks of Karan with a saw and wrapped them in a garbage bag with duct tape. He removed pieces one by one, taking them back to his basement for DNA harvesting and eventual dissolution in acid. Locking the front door behind him, Laksh left whistling. Silence reigned. 10 minutes later, Karan finally stepped out of the storage closet below, praying Laksh wouldn't return. He had barely breathed the entire time Laksh had been busy disposing of the clone that Karan had left in his bedroom. With shaking hands, Karan dialed the number for the police. A lady answered, sounding bored. "Hello, Delhi police." I need to report a murder, said Karan. The woman skipped a beat before transferring the call to a senior officer. Karan mentioned Laksh's address and then hung up before the officer could ask for his name. Karan prayed the police would arrive before Laksh disposed of the corpse and rebooted him and Nina again. Grabbing the bag he had prepared the previous night, Karan headed for the door. He skulked over to his Suzuki Swift and dove into the driver's seat. A loud banging emanated from the trunk of Karan's car, making him yelp. When he realized it wasn't Laksh, Karan relaxed slightly, but the banging brought memories of the previous night's nightmare crashing back. It hadn't been difficult breaking into Laksh and Nina's house. Karan had a spare key. Making it past the keypad in the hatch that led down into the laboratory hadn't been difficult either, thanks to his photographic memory. He had memorized the code Laksh had punched in without even meaning to. He had also absorbed the precise keystrokes Laksh had used to boot the clones up into the tabula rasa mod he had mentioned. His palms sweating, his heart practically leaping from his chest, Karan revitalized one of the remaining clones of himself. The hard part had been stealthily piggybacking the discombobulated clone to his own backyard in the dark. It had been even harder to slit the clone's throat with the kitchen knife he had carried. The gurgling cries of the clone as it died would surely haunt Karan's nightmares for years. Dragging the corpse up to his bedroom, Karan had wiped the gore off the clone with a wet towel, before wrapping the makeshift noose around the clone's neck and yanking it up to the fan. That was only half the trauma though. The banging from Karan's trunk grew louder. Sighing, Karan revved up the car. Part of him wished he'd cut Laksh's throat the previous night instead of embarking on this convoluted adventure, but he'd been too afraid he'd screw it up and end up back in the twisted loop. Taking one last look at his house, Karan pulled away. He drove about 10 kilometers before he spotted a semi-respectable hotel and cut into an abandoned alley nearby. Killing the engine, he approached the trunk of the car and popped it open. Nina, bound and gagged with duct tape, stared back at him with wide eyes. Karan removed the tape over her mouth. "Help!" Nina cried, flailing her still bound arms and legs. "Back off, you fucking asshole! Someone help!" Karan clapped a hand over the clone's mouth. "Please don't scream or we're both dead." The Nina clone continued to struggle. "I just need a minute," said Karan, his muscles straining as he held Nina in place. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." Nina bit Karan's hand, breaking the skin. Karan yelped but held on. "Nina, please!" Nina went still at the sound of her own name, her eyes wide. "1 minute? Please?" said Karan. "I can tell you who you are." Nina nodded very slowly. Karan cut off the tape tying Nina's hands and feet with his car keys. He helped her out of the trunk before retrieving his camera from the bag he'd packed. "Look," Karan said, "your name is Nina, alright? I can't explain everything right away, but here's what matters right now." Karan pressed play on the camera. The video of Laksh stabbing Nina to death flickered to life. The ghostly glow of the screen lit Nina's nonplussed expression in the darkness. I don't understand," she sobbed. "Why don't I remember?" "Your memory's been tampered with." "What? Why?" "You were trapped," said Karan, swallowing, "by a very bad man. He hurt you. Then he remade you. I think maybe I've stopped him. But for now, you need to hide. Do you understand?" Nina didn't reply, continuing to whimper. "Take this," said Karan, handing Nina several thousand rupees in cash. "Check into the hotel with the big red sign." You do know what a hotel is, right?" Nina nodded absently. "Great. Ask the concierge for a room. Pay in cash. Do not give him your real name. Wait for my call." Nina's eyes flashed with fear again. "But I have so many questions." "Later, I promise." "Why?" she said. "Why is this happening?" said Karan, hesitating. "I wanted to give you a second chance. The past, it cuts deep channels, grooves in time. Sometimes the only way out is to forget." "So we're just gonna let that that psycho get away with it? No, he'll get what's coming to him. How do you know? Over many, many iterations, novelty is inevitable. We're here, aren't we? Nina sized him up, her piercing eyes alive for a moment. You promise? I promise, said Karan. The lie escaped Karan's lips before his rational mind could catch up. Blushing, he ducked into his car. Just as he was about to pull away, Nina yelled after him. Who are you? She cried. I'm a friend, called Karan, feeling a lump in his throat. Of course, the police never arrived to arrest Laksh. Karan had cried wolf too often. Laksh spent the next decade making more clones of Nina and Karan than he could remember. They played out the charade over and over like a hackneyed theatre troupe. But Laksh felt as though he was having to replace the clones more often. Was he really killing that many? He reasoned the stresses of the city were stirring his bloodlust. Eventually, he moved to a large farm in the countryside with a huge manor house, living out his days with Nina and Karan, perfectly content. One day, watering the plants in his greenhouse, Laksh wondered if anyone in history had ever had a more fulfilling life. In the distance, the lush orchard of mango trees swayed in the breeze. Laksh blinked. Had he spotted Nina out among the trees? Something was off about her though. She was too far away to be sure, but she looked older somehow. Then Karan stepped out from behind the tree beside her. Laksh felt a flash of rage. Before he could ruminate, another figure stepped out into view. Another Nina. Laksh frowned. Had he accidentally activated two Ninas? Then another shadowy form emerged, and another, and another. Laksh's eyes widened as he realized that there were probably 24 clones of Nina and Karan staring at him from the mango orchard. The gears of Laksh's mind ground to a halt. He dropped the pail. Then Laksh began to run.